It was my first day at my new job. And as I rounded the corner, psyching myself up, you know, got a good impression, head for that front door. And as I did, as I was heading to the front door thinking, all right, Gayle, let's go, let's make this good impression, and I was stopped dead in my tracks by me. I turned and spied in the marquee on the front of the theater. Me. There was me, in profile, in a toga, in a photo on the front of the theater. But it wasn't me. It was another delightful actor named David Ratz, who is starring currently in A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. But we were doppelgangers. It was amazing. It was my twin, separated at birth. And thus started my very much Alice through the looking glass, down the rabbit hole, wild descent into a wonderland called the Black Crouton Dinner Theater. I know that the theater was the first dinner theater in Indianapolis. I just asked Karen, when did the theater actually open? Because if you're looking for history and timelines and specific details, I'm not your girl. I was just recently out of college, away from home, and starting to find out how to find my way in my life as an adult. No training wheels. And as I entered this amazing world, I found that the Black Curtain was more than just a theater to me. It was a community. It was my neighborhood. It was my Avenue Q. It's where I learned how to be an adult in the real world, free from school, free from the parents. Oh my God, now what do I do? And within, honest to gosh, for the better part of a decade, I started in 1971, within a 1.5 block radius, there was this semicircle from 21st Street, Talbot Street to Center Point, 1.5 blocks, that was my entire world. And the center of that was the Black Curtain, flanked by a pizza shop. A little further down the street was the Flying Saucer Museum. Flanked on the other side of the Black Curtain was the Cabaret Galley, soon to be Hummingbird Cafe. Across the street, Bill Cronin's florist shop. An old building that had been converted into apartments and a leather shop. One of the apartments was mine. On the corner was appropriately the corner grocery. And down the street was the Naughty Pine Grill, appropriately named for its decor, its paneling, and famous for its pinball machine and cheeseburgers, which for me in my entire life set the standard for cheeseburgers, and no one else has ever been able to reach mustard with that magic. Couldn't do it. But at the center of this little Talbot Village world was the Black Curtain Dinner Theater. And at the heart of the Black Curtain Dinner Theater was Randy Galvin, who, harking back to my Alice in Wonderland things, I like to think of him as a combination between the White Rabbit, the Mad Hatter, and a leprechaun on steroids. This was a man who was a ball of energy in a tuxedo, wearing a ruffled shirt, having a full beard, pipe, and packing heat. Yeah. This was Randy. Randy played so many roles. He was not only the theater owner, which made him a businessman. Then he was the director, he was a playwright, he was an actor, he was a designer, he built the sets. He was your host for the evening. And that set the tone for all of us. All of us did so many different things, but he was the heart of a cast of amazing characters. First in my mind was, of course, who was my immediate boss, because I started in the kitchen, as Ellen pointed out, was Orrin Kellogg Peanuts Smith, who was noted for his most, I don't know how many of you were ever at the Black theater and hung around in Talbot Village at all. Come on, let's see those hands. All right. Peanut was known for his goop sandwich, which is, and I used to have to make them, to the best of my recollection, it involved a lot of bread, a lot of meat, a lot of cheese, and then the goop was a wonderful mixture of French onion soup and mock turtle soup, and some cheese soup in there too. It was amazing. But it was a humongous plateful. And he served that, we loved that, that was a big specialty of his. And then my other favorite thing of Peanuts was on the buffet line, where you have the sneeze guard with all the lovely little placards telling you what was there, what you were enjoying that evening. The first dish on the steam table, when I first came in and served my first dinner there, I was glad to see that we were having there hot fruit compost. Not hot fruit compost, but hot fruit compost. Yeah. So, and that's it. So there was Peanut Smith. He was the chef. He was in charge of cooking. What a character he was. Orrin Kellogg, Peanut, and then you get Smith, the moniker. It was an amazing name. We also had John Bigelow, who had the Flying Saucer Museum down the street, who was also an artist for the Star, an amazing man. John Heiger, who used to paint a picture from beginning to end during dinner, and then it would be auctioned off before the show. And the most amazing thing about most of John's paintings was that he painted them upside down. Not him being upside down, but he would paint away, and then flip it upside down and reveal something that the audience just had not seen yet. They had not even had any idea what this painting would be, and then it would sell before the show. They would auction it off. My favorite memory of John Heiger is, as of course, he was kind of a mercurial artist. He would have his moods, and I do have at home on particle board, a lovely portrait that he did of me one night, but he got it halfway done, and I said something to offend him, and he took it and stormed out of the place and threw it in the dumpster, which took me a minute to go, okay, so I went and got it from the dumpster, and it is still one of my prized possessions, but I still can't remember what I said to piss him off. But you had so many characters there. We had, Karen, of course, was chief in charge of the box office, but we had people from all walks of life. We had teachers, we had people who came in to be waitresses, we had Sam who carved meat, and wasn't it Jim who also carved meat? We had a family there. We went for years, and we all knew each other. We all had each other's backs. And as I said, Randy had so many roles. We all did so many roles. We learned that life upon the wicked stage ain't everything a girl supposes. What I learned most was not, and what I remember most is not just the shows and the great fun of being up there and then we'll have applause, but the fact that all of us worked together to contribute to that. As I said, I worked as a cook, I attended bar, I worked in the box office, and I did the books occasionally, and waited tables. It was amazing what you could do. The fact that Randy gave a place, a home for various artists and people to come. And it was the first chance that I could ever see that I actually could make theater not be my total livelihood, but a big part of my life and allow me to express myself that way and also support myself. It was an amazing cast of characters. But the fun things that I remember most, you wouldn't think of learning from the theater, was things that stayed with me to this day. In the box office, we didn't have computers then, no computer systems at all, but we had this lovely rack that hung up, and it had just little slots for like business side cards. And those were your reservation cards, but up in the right-hand corner was your number. Of course, you had to put them on the board in alphabetical order so you could find them and give people their tickets. But the amazing thing was you had to keep count all the time. You had to make sure where you were in selling tickets. So you began to learn base 10 very quickly. It was a whole way up Fours and twos, fours and twos. Get the even numbers, leave the odd numbers over here on this hand. And you can just learn to go, okay, that's 10, that's 10, that's 10, that's 10, that's 10, that's 10. So, you know, 2 fours and a 2, 3 twos, 4. You begin to learn how to be able to say at any moment when they would say, what's the count? And Randy would always come in, what's the count? And I can do that in my brain still. I like to use that as a little test against senility. And I still have it up there. Other interesting thing I learned to do is how to clean a coffee pot. You know, the restaurant, their own coffee pots, they get so stained, you never know how to clean them. The trick that I learned there that will stay with me for the rest of my life is ice cubes and salt. And then you just shake and do that around. And it just dissolves and you rinse it out and it's clean. It's wonderfully clean. Great trick. Try it. Any coffee maker. You know, the little coffee makers you have now, they get crunchy. Ice and salt will do it all. I also learned that to do theater, you really do have to swing with, you have to kind of swing with the punches and go. As we discussed earlier, sometimes backstage at the Black Curtain, to get from stage right to stage left, you would have to go outside the building and around and inside another door. Or if you had an entrance, which we did sometimes, from the behind the theater, you would have to go out, run down the alley, up and back into one door. It was amazing. And of course, out on the street were people who would give you a round of applause as you ran down the alley in your costume. Going, oh, I gotta get there. But let me see, I just look for photos. I'm getting strange here. Something else funny that I learned. Oh, yes. How to wrestle what would probably be anywhere from a 50 to 70 pound hunk of beef to get it in the kitchen. It was an amazing thing before you saw that lovely piece of meat out there on the carving table to wrestle it into the oven. And what I learned to do is to cook for hundreds of people, which unfortunately I've never been able to unlearn. And so that's all I can do is whenever I cook for the entire theater. That's how I do it. And then you eat the same thing for days and days and days. It's wonderful. But what I learned mostly was that it was indeed a wonderful proving ground for people to test their legs, to try out, to see what can happen, to find out what community is really about. How the fact that all that's great about the theater is not the glamour you see on stage, but what it takes to put it together and how it does indeed take a village to put it together. So that I know that as I look back, I really feel that I found theater as a living community, as a place to sustain myself in my entire life. I learned at the Black Curtain. That's where it all first happened. And I know that as I go through life, that this kitchen wrench will always have a fond place in my heart for the hot fruit compost